Hello, my Christian friends. I am Dr. Donald Jones, and welcome to 10 Minutes of Theology from the Bible. Welcome to our series entitled, Defending Your Life, How Christians May Defend Themselves Against Attack. This is based on my new book. I have put a link in the description below if you would like to purchase it. This book is not a discussion of the Second Amendment, which guarantees us the right to bear arms, but instead a comprehensive, detailed, biblical explanation of God's command to bear arms. Self-defense and the defense of others pours out of His very nature, power, and attributes, and is an intricate part of His societal and relational structures on the earth and in the heavenly places. Whatever our opinions are concerning this subject, we are to submit ourselves to God's commandments in the Bible, and God has a lot to say about it. These videos will be short summaries of the scriptural presentations in each chapter. This is the 15th session based on chapter 15 entitled, The Equal Access. As the different instances of self-defense and the defense of others were being studied, several truths began to emerge. For God's people to be able to appropriately defend themselves, they must have the ability to stop the violence and end the threat. By necessity, this would require a weapon that is equal or superior to the weapons of the ones threatening us. Here are several principles found in the scriptures which indicate that we must have equal access to weaponry in order to defend ourselves and others. First, the necessity of a weapon. Every person should possess a weapon for defense and not expect God to miraculously save them. We talked about the common use of a staff. Every Hebrew carried a staff for protection. In our chapter on the subject, we demonstrated that staff was not only commonplace, but essential to life. When every Hebrew left Egypt, they were to take the staff among other essential items. Exodus 12:11. This is how you shall eat it, with your belt on your waist, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. And you shall eat it in haste. It is Yahweh's Passover. These are the instructions that the Lord God gave Moses before the Passover actually happened. This did not change in the time of Christ. When the Lord was describing the things that they should bring for their preaching tour, He mentioned the staff. Mark 6:8. He commanded them that they should take nothing for their journey except a staff, bread, a wallet, money, and a purse. So it is critical to be prepared for attack with a basic weapon, which could be a cane, baseball bat, pepper spray, keys with something on it that can inflict pain, a rod, a small knife, an axe, a hammer, or something of that nature, and something, of course, that is legal and according to the law. And then we must have that and be watchful and on guard. If those weapons are not enough, then we see in the New Testament and the Old, if the staff wasn't enough, it would be a sword. In both the Old and New Testaments, we see that God's people had access to weapons beyond the staff. The most common was the sword. This was obviously available to all. We recently discussed the necessity for the Hebrews with Nehemiah to protect themselves. Nehemiah 4:13. Therefore I set guards in the lowest parts of the space behind the wall, in open spaces. I set the people with family groups with their swords, their spears, and their bows. So here are some additional weapons. Notice there was no one running around desperately looking for a sword. They all had swords, spears, or bows. When Jesus indicated that He was leaving them and they needed additional protection, what did He tell them to go and purchase? He told them to get a superior weapon to the staff, which was a sword. Luke 22:36. Then He said to them, but now whoever has a purse, let him take it, and likewise a wallet. Whoever has none, let him sell his cloak and buy a sword. In this passage, the disciples did not protest because it was illegal, unavailable, or too expensive. Therefore, everyone should make sure they have a weapon appropriate to the assessed level of danger in their neighborhood or on their travels. If a baseball bat or something of that nature is not enough, then they might need a gun, a machete, or something above that. But it's important that they know how to use it. There's no use having a gun if it's either illegal in your area or you'll accidentally shoot yourself because you don't know how to use it. So it's best that you have a weapon that you yourself know how to use and is appropriate to the danger. Second, a superior weapon. If we have different weapons from our attackers, we must have the superior ones. As has been observed, people cannot defend themselves and others from harm unless they have a weapon which has the power to overcome the weapon of the one attempting to physically hurt them or others. I have many illustrations of the Old Testament in the book, but I'll mention just one. When God lifted his protection from Israel because of their sin and every man wanting to do what was right in their own eyes, then the nations with the superior weapons were able to conquer God's people in the book of Judges. Christians should acquire weapons that are superior to the ones that may attack them. This will prepare us for a proper defense. God's people were always prepared for attack with the best weapons that they could create or acquire. If they could not acquire better weapons, then they developed better skills, and that's number 3. An equal weapon with a superior skill. If we have equal weapons with our attackers, then we must have superior skills to wield those weapons in order to win and in order to stop the violence. Here are a couple of passages that are important. 1 Chronicles 12:2. They were armed with bows and could use both the right hand and the left in slinging stones and in shooting arrows from the bow. They were of Saul's relatives of the tribe of Benjamin. In 1 Chronicles 5:18, he speaks of the sons of Reuben, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh who were skillful in war. Why is this important? Because though they were trusting in God, they needed to develop superior skills, and that is what is noted in these passages and many others I provide in the book. This is how God usually works. Remember Psalm 18:34. David says, "He teaches my hands to war so that my arms bend a bow of bronze." They not only relied on the Lord God for battle, but relied on the development of their skills, and they needed superior skills if their attackers had equal weapons. Would individual self-defense be any different? Isn't battle really individual self-defense, ultimately soldier to soldier? Or would a group to group, army to army be different? No. It is the same with the same parameters, only on a larger scale. Another example is David facing Goliath. Did God do a great miracle when David killed Goliath? Or did God use David's skill with the sling? When Saul questioned his ability to fight Goliath, David did not say that he would just trust in God. He explained that he had fought a lion and a bear with God's help. At the time, David couldn't even wear Saul's armor, let alone wield his weapons. Saul was not going to send David out weaponless, but gave him his weapons, but he couldn't use them. Since David was unable to wield the armor and the weaponry, he took the weapons that he knew the Lord could use. Why? Because he had developed great skills in their use and knew they would do the job as he depended on the Lord. So, he picked up his sling, and he was able to overcome Goliath with a superior skill and 5 smooth stones. Even though Goliath had greater weapons and greater skills and experience in combat. And that comes to the other part of this, and that is, if you have a lesser weapon, you're going to have superior skills. David was not a soldier when he stood in front of Goliath. Instead, he was a shepherd who had developed skills with a sling that he would use against Goliath. Hand-to-hand combat with a miracle from the Lord was not how he killed the fierce animals. It would not be how he killed Goliath. He didn't stand there and pray that God would do something great. Instead, with the sling and a good aim, David could remain far enough away to kill Goliath without being engaged in actual battle, which he knew he would lose. So David ran toward Goliath, trusting God while God used his skills to find victory. Though we know God was at work, we do not see a direct miracle. That is not what they expected most of the time. Of course, the people on both sides would have attributed the felling of a giant warrior by a young shepherd as miraculous at the same time as acknowledging David's skill with the sling, which was a recognized weapon at the time. Why didn't the army simply pray and ask God to strike Goliath down on the spot? They most likely prayed that God would provide someone to step up and take the challenge rather than praying God would strike Goliath down. This is God's usual approach, to defend unless he desires to do a miracle to glorify his name. 4. The acquisition of new weapons. If new weapons emerge that can overcome ours, we must gain access to those or similar weapons. As has been observed, people cannot defend themselves and others from harm unless they have a weapon which has the power to overcome the weapon of the one attempting to physically hurt them or others. Now, how did they obtain these superior weapons? They were invented, purchased, made, given as tribute to a king, or taken as plunder. When David ran from Saul, he headed to Nob and arrived at the tabernacle. When he asked the high priest Ahimelech if there was a weapon available, he gave him the sword of Goliath. How did the sword of Goliath end up in the tabernacle? First, after killing Goliath, David took the sword of this great warrior as plunder. Second, David was glad to obtain the sword since it was like no other because it was obviously larger. Though the sword is not mentioned, much of the armor is, and it was massive. Not only was Goliath superior in height, strength, and build, but he had huge armor. This weaponry was much larger than the average military issue. Now, David had in his hands the superior sword of Goliath, and with his own experience he had as a warrior, he could now defend himself against the soldiers of King Saul. We also saw that Jesus told his disciples to purchase a sword, since things would become dangerous after his departure and a staff would not be enough. They needed something superior. How would they get it? They would purchase it. As in today's world, ancient peoples were always making, creating, acquiring new weapons that would be superior or equal to the weapons of the many peoples they must defend themselves against. This should also be done on an individual basis as well as a regional and national basis. What kind of attackers will come after me? And I need to have a superior or equal weapon. Number 5, the attainment of new skills. Once we gain access, we must build the skills to use them in a superior manner than those who may threaten us with the same weapons. In Amos, the prophet asserts the coming defeat of Israel and Judah due to their sins. He describes some of the skills that were so valued in battle and that they would not deliver him. This simply meant that God would send an army with even better skills. Amos 2:15. Neither shall he stand who handles the bow, and he who is swift of foot won't escape. Neither shall he who rides the horse deliver himself. In 1 Chronicles 5, the inspired author describes the powerful army that went against the Hagrites. Notice he mentions the skills that were valued when they went to war. The sons of Reuben, we've read this, the Gadites and the half-tribe of Manasseh, valiant men, men able to bear buckler and sword and to shoot with bow and skillful in war. were 44,760. These skills that are mentioned were formidable in battle and would have given them a tremendous advantage in one-to-one combat or with others on the battlefield. Once again, when David faced Goliath, it was discovered that though Goliath had superior armor and even experience, David had the superior skills in a weaker weapon, and with the help of the Lord, felled the giant. The skills he had developed was used powerfully by God. That's important. We develop the skills, God uses them. So, to appropriately defend against equal weapons, we must develop more skills in the use of those same weapons to be able to overcome an attacker. Next, the importance of a continual assessment. We must continually be assessing the very possible threatening situations we might encounter in order for us to be prepared with the best weapons. As we have seen, God's people have always set guards to watch for attack after intense preparation. When Uzzah became king of Judah, he immediately began to build up the defenses of his kingdom. 2 Chronicles 26. Uzzah prepared for them, that is, the coming armies, even for all the army, shields, spears, helmets, coats of mail, bows, and stones for slinging. In Jerusalem he made devices, invented by skillful men, to be on the towers and on the battlements, with which to shoot arrows and great stones. His name spread abroad because he was marvelously helped and became strong. They had guards to constantly assess the state of danger they were in and what may be coming. Therefore, we become those guards. We must constantly be assessing the state of our own danger and preparing for it by the accumulation of weapon skills or both. Finally, we have seen that a Jewish man always carried a staff for his protection and others. Of course, he would watch for danger as he walked. Therefore, everyone should have a form of protection that they carry with them regularly. If we realize that a possible enemy may have weapons that we do not, then again, we may need to purchase additional weapons or gain new skills in the use of our old weapons or the new ones. This is up to really individual assessments. Another principle is the building of protective barriers. To impede an attack and allow time for us to ready ourselves with weapons, we must be surrounded by barriers. In Deuteronomy, Moses recounts the numerous victories they had in the wilderness. He mentions the conquering of the land of Bashan. The Lord empowered them to overcome all of their fortifications. Deuteronomy 3:3-6. So Yahweh our God also delivered into our hand Og, the king of Bashan, with all his people. We struck him until no one was left to him remaining. We took all his cities at that time. There was not a city which we didn't take from them. 60 cities, all the region of Argob and the kingdom of Og in Bashan. All of these were cities fortified with high walls, gates, and bars, in addition to great many villages without walls. The word translated fortified means to gather, restrain, fence, fortify, make inaccessible, enclose, or to cut off. Moses focuses on these fortifications because they are meant to keep attackers out. Yet God allowed them to get in and to win. These fortifications were diverse: walls, gates, bars, solid and high. Basically, it would take huge weapons and much manpower, or the power of a divine being, to overcome them. The walls of Jericho had to be brought down for Jericho to be conquered. The walls did what they were supposed to do: keep attackers out. It was divine power that had overcome them. When the friends of the paralytic attempted to bring the friend into the house Jesus was preaching in, they could not reach him because of the crowd. So they went up the stairs to the roof and dug their way through. Then they lowered him down. The homes in Jewish ancient times had a wall around it with a gate to enter into an outdoor courtyard, which then had steps to the roof of the home. The door on the roof would have been locked. The people secured their homes from attack So these people had to dig their way through the roof. So having a barrier between us and attackers is important. Also, the securing of doors and gates with locks are a critical protection. If you do not lock your doors and you do not lock your gates around your house, you are allowing an attacker to walk in, and you are testing the Lord. Remember the temptation where the devil told him to throw himself off and God would secure him and protect him, and Jesus said, you shall not test the Lord your God. You are testing the Lord. Lock your door. Check your windows. Lock your gate. It's important. That's how God works. I have left out several principles concerning governments and their protection of us, and you can read that in the book. But let's summarize. For us as God's people to be able to defend ourselves, those we love, and the innocent, we must have the ability to stop the violence and end the threat. By necessity, this requires weapons and skills superior to those threatening us. This is God's normal way of doing things. Us simply praying and trusting the Lord and leaving ourselves open to attack is not God's way. That is not how we see Him work in the Bible. This is Dr. Donald Jones. I would appreciate your support by taking the actions you see on my left. Goodbye, my Christian friends, and may God bless you.